Hey guys, welcome to the singles and dating day of our couch conversations. My name's Abram. I am I'm the director of not the director. I'm the director of media at More Revolution. So all the stuff behind the scenes that make it look pretty. And today we have a special guest, Carrie Lloyd, who's going to join us in just a second. Carrie, once you come in, there should be a button at the top that says "Request to Join." I can add you in that way. Um, I'm very excited for today. Carrie and I have just been talking for the last, here we go. Talking for the last 30 minutes about all we wanted to talk and share with you, and it's super exciting. It's going to be really good stuff. Today's topic is how to be, there she is.
Hi! So good to see you guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Carrie Lloyd.
Hello, my friends. How are we all doing? We're just letting you all load in and join us. Are you staying sane? Are you surviving? Are you, I don't know, are you just keeping it together? I've been thinking about my single pals more than anyone else, Abram.
Yeah?
I'm not joking. Yeah, I've been reaching, and actually I felt like just before we kind of get going, if there are any single parent friends of yours, anyone that you know that live alone, please reach out to them. I know it gets really easy to get super distracted with just the people that you're living with right now. But I've been talking to foster parents, single foster parents, single parents that like, everyone forgot about us, you know, and they need our support still just while we're in isolation. So before we even get talking about our singleness, I just thought if there's anyone in your head that you're thinking of or anyone that comes up in this next hour, please reach out to them. Just tell them that you love them. I think it's going to be really good.
That's a brilliant idea. Great job, Carrie.
Carrie's
on it.
Right away.
Can I get you just to tweak your camera down a little bit?
Is it a really bad angle? Is that better?
There we go. Great. Yep.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great. Everybody in the world, can you hear?
Hello, hello. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Hearts. Laughing. I could just do this for the next hour. Shout out.
What up, Jay Legendary? Here's a shout out. Great. There we are.
All right.
So if you don't know Carrie, you should have her read you a book sometime. Maybe even one of the books that she's written. The British accent makes her even more brilliant, but strip the accent away, she's still a very brilliant, very articulate woman. So you should subscribe to all the things she does. Let's talk about a few of the things she does right now, just so you get to know her. You're an author. You've written 2 books.
Yeah, written 2 books. The third one's on its way. So the next book, Mexico loves me. Thank you. And Paraguay. There's so many people tuning in from all over the world. This is so exciting. I've got my third book is The Noble Renaissance. It comes out on the 2nd of June. And that's all about character. So the first 2 books felt like my kind of teenage books of like my journals of dating and me being atheist and then coming back to Christianity and my journey back to purity, all that kind of stuff was a big part of my journey. And no one had written a book about why are we supposed to hold out until marriage? Why are we supposed to, apart from our evolution. So yours was the first book that I ever read. Not yours personally, Abram, but
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad it was so impactful for you.
So that was a big start, and then I just started looking at Christian dating, and I was so fascinated with Christian dating because of course I'd been dating an awful lot of people in the secular world, and I really liked some of the honor components that were in our dating culture, but also, my word, we're terrified in dating in the Christian world. Terrified. A lot of fear, a lot of people not taking ownership because they often like to blame the Lord on that one. And so
watch out.
So it's been quite a journey, and I was up in Bethel for 8 years. I just moved down to Los Angeles, Hollywood. My dating life has improved magically since moving down. And I'm very happy to talk about that a little bit as well, of just what it looks like to change your location sometimes, especially with your personality type. So does that make sense? But we'll talk about that a little bit during the show.
Yeah, you're so good. So you've written 2 books.
Yeah.
At the end of this, you can go to our Instagram lives and we'll put her books on there so you can swipe up and get them. Not the 3rd book yet because
Not
June
yet.
2nd.
I think you can pre-order it. But
Oh,
that's all
really?
about having a noble character. And I swear, even just studying nobility and being a
Mm,
noble person has actually changed how I do singleness as well.
really?
Yeah, and I think just even looking at what is it that makes a noble character has actually really made me go, do I own those things? Do I need to work on
Mm,
those things? And it's not a sense of discontentment in myself now, but actually more a grace on when we get it wrong and actually taking ownership of some of the choices we're making, you know?
wow.
So thanks for the coffee mug. This is anthropology. Someone was just mentioning they like their coffee mug. Should I just bring in products all the way through?
This segment is sponsored to you by Anthropology.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
so Carrie, you're
Yes,
single.
I am.
You're working on the
Wait, what?
dating. By the end of this, the goal is for her to not be single. So
Hey!
get your stuff together and send her a message at the end. Um, so I am recently married. I've gotten married
Congratulations.
like 10 months ago. Thank you. 10 months ago, and I was 31 when I got married. And let's see, I was ready to be married at probably about 14, maybe 15, you know. I was
So you're an early starter.
Yeah, so some of the guys are like later on, they're like, oh, girls and stuff, and I'm like, I'm ready. Like, I love romance. I love
Yeah,
chick flicks more than my wife does.
yeah.
I'm a little more hooked than I should be. But um, I was in the dating world for quite a bit and trying to make it work and figuring out some of the great things and some of the things that weren't so good, both in the dating world and in
Yeah,
myself that had to get adjusted. Um,
yeah,
Carrie is also in the dating world, also
yeah.
working through figuring that out down in LA.
24
Um,
now, so
is
it's,
it 24 this
I'm
okay.
24,
I,
just coming
okay,
24.
this coming here. Okay, great. That's what I thought.
This is
So
where I can't ever lie about my age because it's all over the internet and in my book. So I mean, it's just it is what it is, and I do actually think in some ways, I wouldn't suggest that I've been struggling being single from my 30s in order to be a sort of positive hope or beacon for other people. But I actually am very, very grateful, Abraham. I wasn't together like you were. I didn't take ownership of certain things when I was in my 20s. I was very career driven. Um, and I wanted to get married. I thought I'd probably be married by the time I was about 30. But at the same time, I didn't make intentional choices about my character. I didn't make intentional choices about what I was going to marry.
mm,
I kind of
mm.
just stumbled upon people and said yes, and oh yeah, okay. It's very kind of like in the moment with people. Does that mean we have to plan intentionally and have all these big 5-year, 10-year plans? Not necessarily, but I do think we need to dream in character a bit more.
Hmm.
If that makes sense.
It, yeah. Let's I want to say one quick thing, and then let's jump into that idea
Do
right
it.
there. Is one of the reasons why we asked Carrie to be on here. Yeah, we'll save it till live. You can watch it again later. It's for you, Cami. But one of the things why we wanted Carrie in here is because she's actually walked this out. This isn't like sometimes you hear preachers on stage who are doing their best, but their story is that they got married when they were 22, and they're trying to help people navigate later in their 20s and 30s how to still be single. But Carrie is doing it well, still navigating like as things go along, but helping people out. So she's actually has real life experience in this. So when you're listening to her, pay attention. She's worth the things that she's going to she say. Like they're coming from a place of ownership and of authority, and like she gets it. So I just wanted to say that before we dive in, so you don't think it's some ethereal thing that she's coming up with by principle.
Thanks for saying that, Abram.
Okay, so you said let's dream about character here.
Yeah.
Actually, can we skip that and just dive
Skip
right
it.
in?
We can come back to it.
Okay,
Yeah.
I thought about it and I was like, yeah, but
I know.
we
I
just
threw you. I threw you.
Okay, great. So one of the things is you're single. You've been single for a while. There's not really any movement on the horizon.
Yeah.
What do you do in your head, in your internal world, to start navigating that?
Okay, so I mean, for me, I think we're in a lot of us, especially in the Christian world, we actually think that the Lord is going to bring us the one, And we do hear the stories. We hear the stories of someone delivered a package to your door, and all of a sudden you realize you've opened the front door to your husband. And those stories do happen. I've had friends that literally met each other by crossing the road, and she was in the car and he was going across the traffic lights. They exchanged eye contact and boom, it was game on. They got married within 8 months. Like, those are the stories. They are very real. It happens in a moment. What I would say is, there is sometimes a little bit too much expectation on the Lord bringing us things, rather than, and we don't therefore take on ownership of the things that we can change, the things that we can do. He has to navigate with our freedom of choice and free will. We do have the ratio of 60-40 in regards to believers being female and men. So what does that mean? Does that mean that the 20 out of that 60 have to go with unbelievers? Some of them do. And then some of them are like, well, this is part of my worship to the Lord. This is actually, the reality is the majority of us could have actually been married by now, but it doesn't mean to say that we should have been. And I'm very grateful, actually. Now I'm getting to the point in my late 30s where I'm just like, gosh, I'm so thankful that I didn't actually, not to put down the people that I dated, but we wouldn't have been the right match, whether they were unbelievers or whether they were just completely different personality types, for me to bring up other children. For me, adoption was a real big deal breaker. I really wanted to adopt. I knew that was a calling on my life. And there are other people in the world that want to do that, but not a huge amount. And so for me, it's been so important to be true to yourself and what you are, but also be able to allow yourself to have little days where we grieve about it, because it is a desire in our heart. And I do worry about people that don't allow themselves to just have those tears. And sometimes I think we can be a little bit blinded by waiting upon the Lord. So we actually don't keep our pipeline. I like to call it the pipeline. The pipeline is basically the thing that allows the opportunities for dating to happen. When I get the most hopeless is when I feel like the pipeline is at its smallest, if that makes sense. So that means that I'm working very hard, traveling an awful lot. I'm unable to meet new people. Even when I am traveling, I'll be speaking on a stage. I'll be taken off the stage and put into a green room. I won't necessarily get to meet many people on the journey because we're busy working and doing our thing. So for me, I think it was very important to recognize, I just realized that I haven't actually expanded my pipeline very much in order for people to come in. And even when you feel like you've got momentum, so for example, now I'm living in Los Angeles, my pipeline's got much bigger all of a sudden, not just because there's many more people in it, but I hate to say it, Abraham, maybe you could speak into this, but there are actually a lot more alpha males. And I always used to get that thing of like, she's intimidating, she's just a little intense. And I am, if I'm on the microphone and going after the Lord or something, it can be pretty intense to watch. But at the same time, I'm actually a tiny little woman that has feelings and is quite sensitive and quite tender. So in some breaths, I've been a conquest for some guys, and they might have been 10, 15 years younger than me. And that, albeit flattering, wasn't necessarily going to always make a great match with each other. Not because I think that the age gap is I think age is nothing but a number, honestly. And so I do give those moments an opportunity, but I also am looking for an equal and someone that is actually going to spark my brain. I remember Bill once saying to me, you are going to have a guy that sparks the brain. And I've become more and more in agreement with that as I've got older.
Yeah. I think you just said a lot of great things there that I feel like, I was like, oh, great. So that's a blog, and that's a blog, and that's a podcast. You're like, okay, let's expand it. Let's go back. Wow. Okay, let's start with getting the inflow in. Because I think one of the things you had kind of alluded to there was it's easier, I think, keeping your hope up is helpful whenever there's momentum. Like whenever there's movement in your life, I think a lot of times we feel hopeless when we feel like nothing is happening. And sometimes you can have a lot of first dates or a lot of second dates and you never get to like a third date or beyond the 2-month mark or the 6-month mark. And you're like, well, I'm burnt out here. But I think for a lot of the Christian world, it seems like they're stuck before the first 3 dates is where they kind of get stuck at. How would you, what's some of the things that help kind of expand that pipeline, either in our brains or in our locations?
Yeah, that's really good, Abraham. I think a big part of it, the fear factor has been one of the most crippling things for me to experience in the Christian dating world. There will be times where I call up my other girlfriends and go, I actually miss dating in the secular world. I'll be honest. But it's
Wow.
pointless doing that because we don't believe in the same thing. But
Yeah, but
here's why I miss it.
Why is that? Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, I miss it because we didn't project so far into marriage and so far down the line. I think everyone's kind of on their best behavior for about 3 or 4 months. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think everyone's kind of like, hello, for about three months. And then we kind of
This
get
is
relaxed.
the best side of me. Always sit on the left side of the table.
Always here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're kind of all, you know, and we're excited and all the dopamine is kicking off in our brains and we just love their attention and we're just doing everything right. But then you go through the seasons of like, oh, now we're kind of comfortable. Now you're going to start seeing some of the places that I'm worse at. And that's normally when people vanish, or everyone's looking for so much security in the first 3 dates. So, you know, sometimes people are actually wanting clarity. They're like wanting clarification, or they're using markers. Are they looking at my Instagram? Are they liking every picture that I've put up there? Are they contacting me every day? Or they seem to have been online instead of wanting to call to me? All of these different markers that we're looking for says to me, oh, you're already feeling unsafe. And it says to me that you haven't actually allowed 2 things. One is you've got to allow some space for exploration. You've got to allow someone to explore you without feeling the need to commit to you forever. I think us as women, and forgive me if I'm wrong, ladies especially, but I think sometimes we're wanting so much strong clarification and we want people to confirm that they're in straight away, that the guys can get really frightened if they explore and they decide, oh no, she's not the person for me, whatever that thing is. They need to be allowed to do that without a backlash from us, if that makes sense. So, but at the same time, it is required, I think, of the guys and the girls to clarify and communicate. So in the secular world, I'm not suggesting they're better at dating because they do all sorts of things that I wouldn't necessarily recommend, but I would say this: they communicate what they want. They communicate how long they want it for, and they will be very honest with you the reasons why they're not wanting to date you anymore. And I loved that. I don't actually think it's okay, and we were saying this just before we went live, I don't think it's all right to start using the phrases of scriptural phrases that we use or the religious jargon that we use, which is, I'm just covering her, but the reality is she was too old, or the reality is I don't find her as attractive. That stuff gets back to you. And so before you know it, it breaks the trust of moving forward to the next guy. So we need to actually just allow us, you can explore people without having to completely invade their world. You can watch them and learn them and do group stuff, but without getting huge amounts of your emotional needs met with loads and loads of retention. And I just felt like actually there are times where people communicated much better in the secular world. And there wasn't this huge onus on, we need to know where we're at because it's been date 2.
Yeah, it feels that way a lot. Like in the Christian world, it's like, I love what you were saying about like that we need that security of like, okay, this is going to be there, or like I think sometimes we hear the idea of like guarding your heart or like protecting their heart or doing like all that stuff, and it requires a level of security and a level of I need to know that we're going to be at least a level 8, either before I start. With attraction, with character or something, before I start, or before we actually get serious. We're a little bit scared of that process of like, let's explore what this could be together. You know, let's like, we're afraid of using our words. A lot of times, like you were saying, even in a breakup, we make up excuses or reasons why we're actually breaking it up. And we think we're saving them so we don't hurt them, but in reality, we're just saving ourselves because we don't want to have to say the hard words to own it.
I mean, I can give you an example. I had there was a guy I really liked, and I'd been told he liked me for a long time before he actually took the plunge and asked me on a date. And he'd never actually been in a relationship himself, and his words were that he was just very cautious. And so, and I took on his words. and I actually really respected him. I respected a lot of the things that he stood for, a lot of the things that he does and does in his community. And so we were in, and he asked me to be his girlfriend. We'd been on the phone quite a few months. He asked me to be his girlfriend, and I was like, oh, this is exciting. I haven't been someone's girlfriend for a long time, you know. And it is, you know, you have dates and then you ask someone to be your girlfriend. It is a level.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah,
level.
absolutely.
It's opening a door to something extra, you know. And also for me, people watch me. People watch my story, you know. And I love the fact that people are like, "Your testimony is my testimony, Carrie," and I'm like, "Yeah, when's that gonna be?"
Yes.
Like, yes. It's just
When I go in, I'm bringing everyone with me.
exactly. And so I know it's going to be a beautiful story. But I would say this: there have been times where I'm like, "Is this ever going to happen?" And not only it feels so much more vulnerable when you're being watched by other people. I chose that. I chose to make my life be watchable. I wrote the books on it. I made myself the pin-up poster chick that's single in the environment. Loads of people come to me over and above married couples in the environment because they're like, you get it, you get the pain. And exactly like you were saying, people are preaching from the front. And so saying, you know, well, you know, I had to wait until I was 27. I'm like, try 39. And it's just like that. But at the same time, you've really got to be very, very careful of not questioning the goodness of God and not questioning his kindness for you, because actually there have been so many times when I look back and go, oh, you were protecting me. I didn't realize you were protecting me from that. And if you hadn't protected me, this would have been a lot harder. Let's go back to that guy, because I didn't finish that story about the guy. So he basically asked me to be his girlfriend, and he was telling everyone, and I wanted to see all of my crew. And so I brought all of the crew in, and I had beautifully, I'm pretty good now having I have what I call the cabinet. So it's a bit like the Prime Minister has the cabinet in the office, makes all the final decisions, if that makes sense. But they're also your accountability and the ones that give you advice. The reason why the cabinet became so important to me was that I wouldn't hold my worth on people that might project their own self-deflections onto me because of their own fear or their own self-questioning. So it's very important that I actually had people see all of my mess on a day-to-day basis, so that if someone did bring me a few things, and this example is going to explain it. Basically, within 48 hours, we'd been dating for, I guess, about a month, and I'd been his sort of girlfriend for this time. And within 48 hours, he completely changed. Couldn't even look at me, couldn't even look me in the eye. Nothing had happened. There'd been no argument. There'd been no even disconnection, no event really that could have taken place. But I could just really completely disconnect. And I'd actually handed over a letter just saying how noble and how kind and how lovely I thought he was. And within 30 minutes, he'd finished the relationship and said, just not feeling it, just not feeling it. And I went, okay. Do you think there's what are you comparing this to? Because you haven't actually been in this before. Like I hear what you're saying, but it's been 4 weeks. So I don't know whether it's been given. Anyway, he wanted some time. He had 7 days, and then he came back and basically said, you know, I just saw a few things and just made a decision. And I said, can you tell me what these things are? Because I'd love to know. Because if you're seeing these things and I didn't even see them, that's worrying for me, because I have a huge amount of accountability. I have people checking on my blind spots all the time. I can't get through a day without that. So I would love to know. And the response was, I'm not your spiritual father. And I went, well, I'm glad you're not. I wouldn't have been dating you if you
Weird dynamics there. Not interested. Next.
Yeah. And so the problem with that was it was too vague. It was just too vague. And I think what would have been so much more helpful and would have actually established a friendship with this guy afterwards would have been like, I just wasn't attracted to you, or it's your age, or it might have felt brutal in the moment, but it would have been less ignoble. It would have been actually kinder to be truthful. And I think sometimes we take on too much false responsibility of the ownership of someone else's heart. And before we know it, we actually find this out from other people. Or they make it very broad and say, oh, there are a few flags. And when I ask people that question and they don't give me the answers, well, that feels very uncovering and actually feels quite detrimental towards the other person. So it is our responsibility to know who we're actually going to speak into. It's our responsibility of who we share this journey with. It can't be very many people in order to cover the other person. And I think I've shared before, but there are guys in Manhattan, 80% of guys in Manhattan in the church were actually dating outside of their church because they were so nervous of their reputation being damaged in the church.
Wow.
Yeah. So we as women have to take a little responsibility, and I think it's our choice sometimes to go, I actually need a little bit more clarity on this. And the same with guys. Hey, this is I know I'm texting you and I'm calling you and having coffee with you. I am actually exploring you. But I don't know you very much yet. So I'm just getting to know you. Is that all right? Or is it making you feel uncomfortable? Just over communicating, I swear, is an absolute game changer.
I love that. That's what I was gonna say. Another reason why I love like having your cabinet, which I want to steal and use now as my own.
Yes.
Henceforth, I'll give you credit the first couple times. But having the cabinet for yourself is whenever he comes back and he says, "Well, you're just like this." You can look at your cabinet and be like, "Am I like this? Because if I am, let me know." Like I had friends to go like, people always say, "Well, we're just not sure why you're single." And I'm like, okay, you're not really, I mean, thank you. That's encouraging. But at the same time, I want somebody to tell me why I am single. Because I didn't want to be single. I'm like, if there's something wrong, help me see. So the cabinet is able to speak to you. But on the other side, they help give you language to communicate. Like this guy, if he had, I don't know him or his situation, but I know guys like him to go, a lot of times, guys, we're just not super great with our words because typically we're not, whether it doesn't come naturally to us or we're not raised around people who articulate super well, or it's just assumed guys can't articulate well, so they give up.
That's it.
But like even having your cabinet in there of some single friends that get it and some married people that understand like, hey, I understand your perspective. Now that I've been married for 15 years, for 2 years, for some amount of time, I can also understand a little bit more how the opposite sex works. Let me help you craft some language. So if you're in this situation and you're like, I'm just not feeling it, and you say something and they say, well, can you tell me more? And you don't know, please don't come up with something. Please just go, hey, can you give me a day? Like, let me think about it and let me come up with and put words to my feelings. Because I want to articulate this well to you, but I don't know how to do it right now. So can you give me a day? And then you go to your cabinet and maybe you say the rough, harsh words to them. And then they go, great, you can say that. Like, let's take that idea of you're not attracted to her, but instead of saying you think her butt's too big, let's craft that into a language that's a bit softer for her. Because sometimes
I think what's interesting as well is a lot of these reasons that people bring up to break up with are reasons that were there at the very beginning. So let's talk about the size of someone's butt. That was there already. The age was there already. The attraction, you know, you're attracted or you're not. And, you know, I remember someone was in one of my gym trainer was in the gym, and all of a sudden 3 guys that I dated separately, obviously not at the same time, they all came into this gym, just to clarify, all about monogamy. They come in separately and go out for workouts, and one of my friends was in there and she went, wow, Carrie really doesn't have a type, does she? Because they all look so different. They were all completely different people. And I said, I kind of like that though, because it shows that I'm actually open to exploring and, experiencing people. But I think you have to build a trust with yourself. I'm not frightened of it not working out. I think I feel vulnerable. The older I get, the more of these experiences can become a back catalogue and they can start to define your worth on some level. And that's really dangerous. And one of the things I would say that I navigate with women who are getting into their 30s and later 30s, they start to have experiences with guys and they become more and more self-protective, and they've got this wall up around them that is making it much harder for guys to get in. So my biggest battle is actually keeping vulnerable and keeping my heart open without the fear of something from before repeating itself. And if I don't speak into that, if I don't actually take time between that relationship and the next one, then I will let it flood into the next. And I've actually cultivated, hopefully, a way to trust myself, so that if it is someone that I don't like, and I've gone, I really, these are the things I like about you. And one of the best pieces of information I was given in regards to closing, and we were talking about, really need to talk about how we close a relationship, because that can actually cause some of the problems of the fear of the church, especially when the church is our safe haven. We come to it, we want to just experience the Lord. If we feel like that's not a safe haven now because either there's gossip about us or there's just misguided information about you, it's very hard to be yourself in that environment. So it is our duty as brothers and sisters of the Lord to actually communicate clearly and also get people involved. So for example, let's use that example of someone going, just not feeling it. I saw a few things. And if I'm not being given the answers and they come back with, I'm not your spiritual father, I'm like, great, can I get you on the phone to my spiritual father then? Which is what I said. Because I wanted to see if he actually had accountability for it. The people he'd gone to never met me. So they didn't have any kind of reference point. And one of the things that was really important to me was that when we are speaking truth, it is actually truth. It's not your understanding of truth. And if you are not frightened of you speaking truth and being accountable to it. So he was actually willing to speak to my spiritual father. My spiritual father, one of them, called up. And he called me back and he said, yeah, you never gave me what those things were. He said, I actually don't think there were any. And these are the reasons why I think they sort of drew back. And so I can't hold on to the things of what other people declare over you, because the cabinet have been the truth tellers, and they are the ones that will tell me when I'm going wrong, you know. And I'm so grateful for that, because then I can choose what's mine and what isn't. And I just wish we got better at taking ownership of our choices and the things that we say over people, because that would make our entire dating life just so much easier.
Wow.
So
say la there for that a second. Everyone just take a drink and let that sit in.
I do want to say one thing. We're getting loads of questions over the last, I'm sorry, Abraham, and then just, you know, change that around if you need to. Getting a lot of people asking about the questions like, what do we do when I'm not being chosen? Like, what do I do when I've just never been the choice? Yeah. And
can we come back to that in just a second?
No. Of course you can go.
Because one of the other questions, because I really want to get to that one, but I think this one will play into it. Because you kind of already started it. A lot of it's just like, how do you stop from being bitter? Like when all this stuff comes up. And I think you brought in the cabinet of like having truth, like having a group that's you're accountable to, that's truth tellers, that's community for you, that gives you life and that helps filter some of the crazy that comes in. And then you like they help reinforce your identity of what God's been saying about you in that. Can you kind of maybe speak to that a little bit more before we jump into that next one?
Yeah. I've seen people marry for the wrong reasons due to bitterness. So, or bitterness that they're not in the same, or they're being left on the shelf. And so they make decisions based on, well, this is my best bet. Scarcity, absolutely. Scarcity is a huge thing. So bitterness for me, of course, it's one of the main three doors that opens ourselves to spiritual warfare. I've seen the absolute decline of people when they allow bitterness to become the thing. And they might have very real, very honest, very true stories, and you have every right to be mad, to be upset, to be hurt. The problem is at some point you actually have to work out a way to respond rather than react. Because if I can choose how to respond, then I will not be dragging that into the next relationship. And there have been times where I think sometimes we can get more bitter when we haven't used our voice. So there have been times where I've communicated, hey, that wasn't great. You didn't do a great job of that. And this is why you didn't do a great job. And also I'm going to ask you to not do these things now. And if they choose to, and they still do, then I'm like, oh, bummer. That could have gone so much better. But at the same time, I'm going to honor where you're at, the choices that you're making, the choices you're not making. And I actually purposefully have a list. Be really careful about what I'm about to say. Not a list of what they look like or who they are, but I actually have a list of what is in their character. And that holds me accountable, not just to me not getting bitter, but me to hope still.
Wow.
So I often write a letter to whoever he is going, thanks for being clear with me. Thanks for always communicating. Thanks for not just thinking about yourself, but actually that you think about me in this journey too. That has been such a huge part of me shifting into keeping hopeful, as opposed to making my own story and narrative about what someone else did to me. And so bitterness only comes in
Mm.
when I handed over the power to somebody else that got to see me for a few months. I've been with me for 39 years. They don't get to make that kind of narrative over my life. And so this is why our parents, my father obviously died when I was 23. And one of the things that would come up for me is when a guy didn't do a great job, I'd be not only grieving that they didn't do a good job, I'd be grieving that my dad wasn't around for me to talk to. And so I
Dang.
actually would get bitter that a guy had chosen to put me in that space. And I went through this for a while. And it wasn't until I actually started pastoring other people that I recognized the power of bitterness and what it was holding us back from. Bitterness holds you back from growth, and it holds you back from the guy that's supposed to be with you. So if we can work really hard on, like, that was your choice, my friend, and that sucked, that was your choice, but I'm going to choose to love you, and I'm going to actually choose to honor the choices that you actually chose to do with me, even if they're not things that I thought were honoring or kind. I'm going to choose to be kind to you. I'm going to choose to actually not get bitter at you. I'm going to, and I actually do practices. If a photograph comes up, or someone mentions their name, I go, Lord, just bless them, take care of their heart, make sure that they actually know that I love them in any way that I can. It doesn't mean to say that I have to be in their world. I think sometimes people hold on to ex-girlfriends or ex-boyfriends to justify that they're all okay or amicable. We don't have to hold on to those relationships, because that too can actually stop us from being with the next person. So I think for me, I much preferred surrendering to the experiment and going, what a great guy. You know, I went on a date with someone. I've had a couple of dates with a guy recently, and he's just awesome. He's just like this lovely alpha male. He just makes decisions. I feel tiny with him. And it was such a relief to not be dating fear. And that's probably the first time I've had that for, I don't know, a couple of years. And it's just been lovely. Does that mean that this is my guy? I don't know. I've had 2 dates with the guy. And he has to earn a lot of the space into my life, as so do I with him, you know. And so I like to look at their character. I like to look if they can handle pain okay. I like to see if they are bitter themselves. If they hold a grudge, that's going to be a problem for us at some point, because I'm going to go wrong at some point. And when we do make mistakes and when we do get it wrong, how do you clean up the mess? That actually, my whole journey of being single is, how do I build trust with myself? Sometimes cleaning up the mess, being kind to myself when I've got it wrong, all of that. It's just so important. So what does it look like to cultivate the best relationship with me in this? Because I will become a much better person for whoever comes in my life, because she and I have got a much better relationship now. And so that helps in regards to purity. That helps me navigate. I've said this before, but I don't think the opposite of lust is love. I actually think the opposite of lust is actually wisdom. So if I can make wise choices, both towards men and with myself, and have boundaries that will cover myself from not exceeding intimacy with trust, then wisdom becomes one of your finest friends. If you can make wisdom your best friend, then you will actually make very good choices with other people. And having accountability, having spiritual fathers and mothers that are willing to just check in and go, all right, let's just talk about this. Let's see if this is a good idea. And if there are people that are like, I'm thinking about ending this, but how do I do it well? How do I do it with honor and loving them? Don't give them a whole long list of things that they did wrong. That doesn't help. You actually need to give them a little list of what was brilliant about them, as well as why it can't potentially work out between you and them. And like you were saying before, you're a brilliant person. It's just, there is an attraction for me, or actually I do have an issue with the age, or whatever that thing is. And I'm sorry that I opened up this door when I should have really seen that coming beforehand. You know, that would have been great. Just that kind of stuff. No one can argue with your opinion. People can argue with lies though. So that's
Wow. Okay. So if you, do you do coaching still? Like,
I do. I've put it on hold. I'm doing a campaign at the moment with a bunch of NGOs and a collaborative campaign with the government and the private sector in order to reduce the foster care crisis in America. So we've got busy. And
Okay.
I think for the next few months, I'm not doing any coaching, but I will at some point. I will. And
Okay,
I've
so you
done a few
definitely
podcasts on this stuff as well, so maybe I should do another one.
you should just keep talking.
Okay.
I have like questions, and I like came with here's my thoughts I'm gonna say, and then as she starts talking, I'm like, just shut up and listen to wisdom. So
I'm
here we
sorry.
are. Okay, so we have one question left,
Yeah.
at least that I can think of.
Okay.
Was revisiting the one that you wanted to talk about. But at the end, we're just at this stop point. What's your podcast called now?
Oh, it's called the Carry On podcast. You can get it on iTunes and Spotify. And I always love when people are messaging me saying, can you actually just talk about this? So I love that stuff. Very happy to talk about real things. So one of the most popular ones was the one that it was the single focus. And I get pretty real. I get pretty honest about just navigating disappointment, not having met the guy, all of those things. I did that, I think it was last Christmas, maybe the Christmas before. But that seemed to be very encouraging for people, because I just think people don't recognize what a gift being single can be.
Wow.
And sometimes we're wanting ourselves to be in a different season that we're not supposed to be. If you look at some of the most profound people in the Bible, they were not married, and it didn't mean that they were unlovable. And I'm with you, Abram, on the whole thing of like, why aren't you married? I don't understand why you're still single. It's as if it's a negative connotation. The reality is there are plenty of people that would like to marry people, and there are people there like, well, that's not true, I've never been chosen. But I know that there are times where actually even Christians are like, well, I don't really want to go on the dating sites or the dating apps. I don't really want that to be my story. Just be aware that you're actually cutting off a pipeline if you say that, and we can't get mad at the Lord for them not showing up if the majority of people are actually starting to date online. And a lot of people, there's so much less of a stigma now than there was 10 years ago about online dating. And some of my favorite couples met online. And I do think there's a way of actually adjudicating much better compatible matches through. I mean, Neil Warren, who is the guy that founded eHarmony, wrote a really brilliant book that Dan Farrelly once gave me, and I had to read it behind a newspaper because I was just so embarrassed about the title. But it was called Finding the Love of Your Life. I'm like, no, I don't need to be reading that in public. I don't need to. That just is so uncomfortable. He said, no, it's not like what to do to find them. It's more the love of your life actually requires quite a few different compatibilities. And so Neil Warren actually talks about, and it's so interesting. I don't know whether you guys have ever talked about this. I'm sure you have. But he talks about the number one principle of what makes a marriage work is adaptability, which I was like, oh, that's surprising. But then also every similarity that you have with another person is like an investment into a bank account. And every dissimilarity is like a withdrawal. So because you have to do more compromise on that one. So when we're talking about opposites attract, which is what I used to actually really like, I've almost kind of, in some ways, I think I'm a little bit of an alpha female. And so I was like, well, it's got no hope for us now in the church. Because every guy that marries anyone, but then I'm surrounded by brilliant alpha females who are married to amazing guys. So the narrative, some of the extreme narratives that we have are blanket statements. There are no good guys in the church, or there's no alpha males in the church. No, that's not true. It's just that your story has to look different to everybody else's. That's the whole point of your story, is for it to be different. But I remember thinking, I don't think I know what I bring to the table. So that's probably why I have just this plethora of different choices going on, because I actually don't know what I bring to the table. And one of my bros said, I don't think you know what you want. And I thought, well, I don't know whether I actually. So I spent some of my single years kind of going, what do I actually want? I think I'm starting to sort of learn more and more, not just what I want, but what I bring to the table for them. What makes a good team? What are the things that I know I'll be good with, and I'll help them in. And so that was very important to me as well. I'm sorry, I'm going all over the place. You can stop
love
me.
it. No, but you're essentially saying here's things that help you thrive in your single season. It's like you're figuring out what is it that I want, so you don't become you learn to be both adaptable but yet not codependent. Because if you're too adaptable, then you're codependent. You're just like, just whatever you want, it's fine. But you're going, no, this is actually something I value. Do you value it too? Can we connect here? And then here's the things that are important to me but don't matter as much, and so it's easy to flex here.
Totally. And I think honestly, the amount of times I've heard guys that are talking about, I want this, this, and this, and girls, I want this, this, and this for my relationship, and I want this person, and I think I really need this, and I'm like, I don't think I've heard one thing of what you want to give for them. I don't think I've heard one moment where you've actually shared what you can bring to the table for. And I have to say that once I started thinking that a little bit more, even the kind of guys I was dating changed a little bit, and the ones that weren't doing a great job, they didn't stay around for very long. I was getting better at going, no, we're good. Thank you. But no, we're good.
So what do you do then? I don't know if you guys have noticed, but she's given like a lots of like,
I know so much.
Through a story form. Yeah, so much. This is why the books she writes books and does podcasts.
Yeah.
But she's given so many like little tidbits of like, learning what you like, kind of dating yourself, another terminology, like figuring out, connecting you two together, working through even some past hurts from your dad or your lack of dad, even if you had a great dad that may or may not be there, or your mom, how the things that are working for guys or even for girls, like there's lots of little tidbits that she shared throughout. So basically rewatch this thing, and then you can't take Dancing Daughter 26. Like I can't take it's fast enough. I'm just glad it's recorded. I'll go transcribe this later and be like, good job, Carrie.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk though. If you're a girl, because here's just a question we got, and I'll read it because I feel like this reaches. We were talking before. This reaches a lot of people. Where does someone start with when it comes to dating, especially if they're in a town where the churches are few and far between, and even fewer? Most people I know say a girl just needs to wait and pray, sit on a wall until he comes for you. My problem is that there's too many women. They do wait, and then no one comes. For others, they get men flocking to them in a millisecond flat. What do you do if you're not being chosen, but you are getting older?
I love that. Sit on a wall and pray. Just like that's so true. I think here's what can happen because of that 60-40 thing I was mentioning. And hear me out. I don't rest my entire laurels on statistics because we serve the author of time and impossibilities. But I would suggest that what can happen with that mindset is that we become a space of scarcity, like that beautiful question of like, there are only so many churches around. And even then, my mother's church, well, everyone's over the age of 75. So, I mean, unfortunately, there aren't options that, as much as my mother would love to set me up with people there, they're more of a father figure, in my life. So that is a very, very real thing. And that's why we have the glory and the beauty of the internet. But I would also say this, sometimes we make people exclusive in our lives before they've asked to be exclusive in our life. So what we can do is actually narrow our scarcity even more by just focusing on one person, because we've got excited and we've got our sort of main eyes on that person. And for me as well, especially, I love to be exclusive. There's actually a different dating culture, I think, in America versus Britain. In Britain, we have this tendency to just date one person consecutively, and then we make a decision to be exclusive, or you were friends before, whatever that thing is. So you don't have and I was having a conversation with a girlfriend about this the other day. She was like, you need to kind of go on 4 different dates in a week. And I'm like, what? That's more than a year. But what? And she's like, well, the reason why I'm saying that is because there's a scarcity factor that will happen if you're just focusing on one person who might be a lot of things that you want to have. But I've done this before. I start to focus on one person because they're giving you a lot of attention, giving you a lot of time. Microdosing is one way of describing it, where people are microdosing your affections, your attention, but they're actually not willing to actually follow through on exclusivity. And so people are allowed to explore you for a bit, but if they're not clarifying what they're actually doing with you, then be careful, women and gents, to actually have conversations to go, sorry, what exactly are you wanting now? You've been doing this for a couple of months.
Yep.
And that's fine. If you don't want to move forward, that's absolutely fine. But you don't really get this much time with me after this amount of if you're still trying to figure me out, I don't know whether I don't think you're really into this, So you're allowed to have those conversations, but the scarcity factor i.e. we're coming from a space of lack of like, if it doesn't work out with this one, then it may not happen for another 10 years, which is a real thing that I would go through, especially as a pastor in the environment. And there aren't many people that would want to come forward and date a pastor because she's surrounded by all these huge giants, you know, and that could be terrifying. But of course, therefore, I was much more attracted to a guy that wasn't intimidated by that. And equally, I was attracted to a guy that was just literally taking ownership of who he was, had the choices, was kind of gung-ho, you know, kind of loved that stuff. But the scarcity factor lessened for me when I didn't hone in on one person until they actually made the decision to be exclusive. And that's that thing of, you know, that, and guys can often say plenty more fish in the sea. I don't know whether we get to say that as easily as women. And so there's more of a scarcity factor with us girls, because you guys do get to choose a little bit more. You do have to instigate on certain levels because we're not sure if we've exposed ourselves or been too vulnerable to us. And we like to nest and take care of our hearts a little bit. But that doesn't mean to say that it's all on you. So we have to communicate too if we like you. I can't pretend that we're your friend when we don't want to be.
How do you feel about a girl asking a guy out?
I mean, I've got girlfriends that have married guys, and she was like, if I hadn't asked him, we would never have been married. We would never have even got together on a date. So I think we've got to be very aware. I think the guys have to be very wary of, I want to be the hunter-gatherer. I want to be the one that makes the choice, because that actually leaves women feeling very powerless. And it also doesn't make them feel like a chooser. And so that question, Ellie, of like, what if I'm never the choice? I'm like, no, you get to be the chooser too. And that's not a feminist, aggressive thing. That's you get to say what your heart wants. And you actually get to make a decision as to who gets to come into your life and takes time from you or not, you know. That's really, really key.
Wow. I love that. Okay, so this was going to be 15 to 30 minutes, and we're at 52 minutes.
Oh.
So if you want more, I know, I like looked over the clock and I was like, thanks for taking extra time. Everybody, thanks for tracking along. If you have more, we're going to continue to do these. Carrie, I want to give you a second and a minute to like final thoughts. So I'll give you a minute. But we're going to continue to do these the next 3 Wednesdays. Next Wednesday, we're talking about how your single and dating life affects your future marriage and some stuff you can prepare for that. The following week, we're going to be talking about your internal world behind porn. If that's an issue or a struggle with you, especially right now, like as everyone gets more isolated, it's typically one of the triggers when they're lonely or bored that starts bringing up stuff or triggering stuff or helping you make some not great decisions. So we're going to talk about that in 2 weeks. And then the final week is going to be how to create movement in your dating life if you feel stuck, or if you're moving and you want to be moving faster. Some stuff in there. So that's coming up. After this is over, we are going to tag some of Carrie's resources in our stories with swipe ups. So all the stuff that she's, her podcast and her 2 books, we'll put in there so you can swipe up and get them from Amazon. Thanks to Amazon Prime, you can still have them delivered no matter where you can or can't go right now. Okay, Carrie, final thoughts.
So
what would you like to leave people with?
I'm so glad that people are like, more, because I'm so sorry if we went far longer than we needed to be.
They can leave whenever they want. If they're not interested, they move on.
I would actually say this. This is actually a word to the church and to married couples. Married couples, don't forget to matchmake. Because there are amount of times that people have married and they're like, how do we have 200 mutual friends and no one actually matched us? I've heard that a lot.
Wow.
So take a day each week to have 5 people that are single going, who would I match with these people? And go to your Facebook or your friends list. Just have a look and see if you can match people. The second thing I would be is, there are a lot of times where I hear the church go, oh, we don't want to really talk about the singles because that leaves out the married couples. Well, married couples are probably going to have children. So they're going to need to know how to navigate and teach the singles as well. Wow. So if you're wondering if you're a church leader or someone or a youth pastor, make sure you give room in a home environment where people can have these honest conversations. because this is honestly where people feel the most alone. It's because people aren't talking about it or are giving space to it. So Abel, I just want to say thank you and to More Evolution for actually being the go-to people that singles can actually talk to. I really love you guys. You actually really helped me out way back when I first discovered you. And as soon as I knew about More Evolution and everything you were teaching, I was like this with the bookshelves of all of your stuff. So I just you were a great inspiration to me, and it's an honor to be here 8 years later and now talking to other singles going, I get it, I feel it. Just make sure you guys have times to cry it out when you're feeling it, but also don't stay in there for too long, because that narrative of tears is not your story. Your story is one full of hope, full of power, full of choice. And I really do believe that if you know what it looks like to take ownership of your life, and actually bring in people, activate the pipeline, get the pipeline bigger. If you don't want dating apps to be your story, maybe change the story, because that's a great way of actually becoming a chooser. But also recognize that you are able to dictate your destiny a little bit more than we might think. But I love you guys so much, and thanks for all the encouragement. It was just so lovely to talk to this. I love this, Abraham. Can we do this more?
This is great. I know, right? I was like, why don't we do this more often?
Yeah, let's do it every night whilst we're in quarantine. I wonder how many people are married because of quarantine. Or not.
Hopefully more are connecting than disconnecting.
I know. Well, the other thing, of course, is that people will start to pick up. There was a meme that went around yesterday of a guy that, you know, and it was talking about a guy that ghosted you 2 weeks ago, returns back in quarantine, starts challenging you, decide to fall in love, and then you're married in quarantine, and then at the end of it, they decide to ghost you again. So just be aware of the people that are touching base because they're lonely and bored. Don't get your emotional needs met in quarantine. Just keep it real. Keep it real.
Preach it.
Have the dance parties with your friends, not with those ones. Okay. Yes. Amen. Selah.
Done.
You guys.
Okay, we're gonna have to do this again and talk more because this is too good.
That's good.
But yeah, follow her, get all her stuff. We'll put links in there. And also, we're gonna record this. It'll be here on our feed for 24 hours, and then we're gonna probably get it up on try to do YouTube and Facebook later today is the goal, if not later this week. So you can rewatch after today, and you can share it with all your friends, single and married, to be like, hey, this is what we're going through. This is what we're going through, and we need you to know so you can help us. So brilliant.
A few people are asking about dating apps. Bumble.
Yeah.
A lot of friends rave about Bumble because of just of the safety for the women. Not Tinder. I would say, yeah, Bumble's probably a good place for the women to start with, just because they have a little bit more protection. I find a little bit safer.
Yeah, I was reading the other day, they were talking about how dating apps used to have that big stigma, but in reality, that's what the matchmaker in church used to do. They used to be like, oh, my cousin, like my nephew likes this, and this, and you like this, and this. Let's get you guys together. But in reality, the way that our society has just evolved, that we're so much more transient and a bit more like not as connected in our overall communities. Like that's essentially what the dating app has done, is it's come in and went, hey, we'll play the part of the Aunt Shirley at church that connects you to, or like I've got a coworker that, you know. So I've got lots of friends that are now married to their person because of Christian Mingle or some dating app. So yeah, I love that.
It's real. It's a real thing.
Should we end here, or do you want to throw up questions, or your choice, Carrie?
I mean, I'm literally like, if there are more questions that are coming your way, you can send them to me, or I'm sure More Revolution will answer them later on in your other single sessions. So DM More Revolution as well as me if there's anything I can help. But it's just an interesting time. We are more single than we've ever been, mainly because we are actually sort of maturing a little bit later, for many different reasons. And we've also got huge amounts of options. As soon as Friends Reunited, which was one of the first social networking sites, started, divorce skyrocketed because everyone was like, options.
Wow.
And so the problem with that is that we've forgotten to sort of persevere through difficult times. So we actually avoid and go to something else when then you're just going to come up against it again. So be very aware of what are deal breakers for you and things that you actually need to work through, and allowing people to actually give them a chance to actually work through some of that stuff.